Hi everyone, welcome to the new tutorial. This one is a little bit different, but I thought it would be a really good time to get into simple backgrounds, basically to showcase your character. Now what I mean by that is, here's a few examples, and as you can see here with Omni-Man, very simple background, and what it does is it really highlights the character. It's basically showcasing them without the confusion around them. You don't want to have too much going on. And there's some things going on here to kind of help frame it, just so it's not so blank and boring. So little details in the sky like this to try and frame that piece. I've got this nice big streak going up through, maybe it's like a jet stream or something. And that really draws your eye down. And then the clouds help frame the bottom. So very simple stuff. And we're going to get into that a lot deeper very soon. There's even other examples here, like the Swamp Thing piece here. It's a little more complicated, but if you really look at it, it actually is quite simple. So it's basically just a single color that's framing him really. And then outside of that, you've got some trees that are basically silhouetted. There is a little bit of detail, but you can just silhouette these kind of tree shapes to help frame the piece and pull it all together. But yeah, basically you can see around him, it's just a plain color that goes all the way around him, and that really helps him pop without any confusion behind him, because he is quite technical. There's a lot going on with Swamp Thing there, especially with all these trees and vines and things. So I really needed to simplify that backdrop a little bit more, just so it's not an overload. There's also ones like this where it's there's a little bit of detail down there with some rocks or rubble. That wouldn't take too long. And then the rest is really just some, swipes of colors in the back there with some smoke to kind of help make it seem like there's detail, but it's really just quite simple if you think about it. We'll break that down soon. And then there's very simple backgrounds like these ones for these Grand Theft Auto pieces here, where the background is literally broken into silhouettes and shapes. And it's really all about the color choices. You can see, especially with CJ, the background is all mostly green. Like if you saw that from a distance, it would seem just like a solid green backdrop. But once you look into it, you can really see the background coming together with some silhouettes. Harley Quinn was another one. She's got quite a simple background. It's a little bit more crazy because it is like an explosion. But you can see it's really all about the character. And just her thing is, colors. I really wanted to have that crazy bonkers kind of thing in the background there, just all these different kind of shapes and colors. You can see I've also got a bit of that diamond shape there, like the like she has on her design. The flash piece is another one here that's quite simple. It's really all about those zoom lines, those big burst kind of zoom lines to try and illustrate speed. But yeah, as you can see, the brightest point of the background is behind him, which really silhouettes him in a way, or makes him pop more. And the rest was just a little bit of electricity to add a bit of energy to the piece. So I'm going to show you how we can do some of those zoom effects later, those burst kind of zoom effects for simple backdrops, yeah. So there's a lot that I want to cover with this. I'm going to try and give you a bit of range so that you can really feel confident next time you want to tackle a background like this. Quite simple, something to showcase a character. And then hopefully this will give you some direction. So to really pull this tutorial in, I really wanted to finish this Goblin piece. So this is Willem Dafoe's Goblin from No Way Home. And I did do an original sketch last time. We did it as part of a tutorial. And that was part of the line art tutorial. I have changed him slightly since that tutorial. So this was the original. The glider was way simpler. I didn't really have any good references. But now I've done the proper glider. This is accurate to the movie. I found some really good references and I'm really thankful for that, because this glider was actually absolutely crazy to try and figure out. I've also changed Goblin's face and a couple of his proportions a little bit more as well. I just felt that it needed it a little bit more. So have a look at the face now. So yeah, I just felt before, I think his eyebrows were just too deep, like too menacing or too crazy. And I just wanted the more insane looking eyes. So I just kind of changed that up a little bit more. So I'm a lot happier with that. I'm going to dive into some flat colors. I'll probably won't be able to fully render him by the end of the tutorial. But yeah, I'm going to get into some flat colors and try and figure out a way that we can illustrate a background. So that's what this is all about. We're going to do a backdrop for this, which is going to be quite simple, and it's going to showcase Goblin here. And that's what we're going to do today. Alright, so here's Jean Grey. This is another official one I've done for Marvel. And this background, I really want to talk about this one because it's very simple in its own way. It really does, it brings focus into the character. It's all about the character. So it's kind of like she's controlling this storm behind her, or like a cyclone of power or fire or whatever it is behind her. And it's really all just drawing your eye around almost into that X in the middle there, or her powers and her face and things like that. So it's all about the character. It's really trying to simplify things. I've done that thing again where it's like really bright behind her, near white. It's like a yellow, but it's near white. And that's really just showing her pose. This is another one of those showcase things. You really want to just not have too much around the character or behind it that's going to interfere. So I've kept that quite clear behind her, and then we've got this nice big effect. Let's try and get into this one a little deeper, and I'll show you how you can kind of get a background that's similar to this. Let's just say we have a nice kind of creamy tone like this. And I would probably use that brush that I mentioned before, which is tapered, but it also fades out the harder you press. So if I get this, I've got a new layer. So the harder I press, the more solid it is, but the lighter I press, it's actually opaque. I like this one. And I'm pretty sure all I did was go around and I was just trying to really get some nice colors. So I'd size it right up and really swoop around in some areas like that, and then like that kind of thing, until I feel pretty happy with it. Now, the idea here is to have the lightest part in the center. So as I go around, I'm half pressing. So I'm half pressing, and that's giving me that opaque kind of look there. And you see what's going on here? And every stroke I do is kind of adding another level to that. So I'm just kind of spinning around. So I really want to just spin that around, and then up in that corner there, I want to try and add a few more levels and get it quite dark up there. And then as I go, I just kind of size my brush down the further I go in. So I want the bigger streaks on the outside, and then I'm sizing them down and going in smaller as I get into the middle a little bit more. And as I get into it like this, I'll get my eraser, but like a hard eraser, and actually start chipping away and erasing some brush strokes that I think just don't look that clean. So this one here, I'm going to erase some parts of this and see if we can just get like a better effect. So chipping away with an eraser is also a good technique. That's just adding levels of detail now. So you see what it's doing. The more I'm chipping away with this with the eraser, it's actually looking like it's giving it this kind of comic effect now, and it's looking a little better. All right, so now that I've got like a base background like that, I'm going to make a new layer above it. Probably this area here is really blank, so I'm going to go in the middle of it and try and match that kind of rotation. But this time I'm going to just add a couple of little cloud effects that kind of stretch around, and they bend back up a little bit like that. And I'll do the same over here as well. And this is just adding some extra streaks of detail in. And back to my brush again, that one. And I'm going to size it up and brush through my selections like this. And you see the kind of effect that we're getting. And I want to try and keep that motion going of it spinning around like this. So keep that motion really ripping through. And that's all on a new layer as well, by the way. And then I'm going to go through with my eraser and start just erasing parts that I don't like. And then what I might do is actually bring a little bit more of the light kind of color back through. Let me show what I mean. So I'm just getting that brush back out and just bringing some extra little effects down in there. You see, I really want some of that light color to creep back in, maybe behind this cloud, and then brush that in. So yeah, I quite like the way that works there. So yeah. All right, next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to flatten all of this. So let's flatten it. And then I'm going to go through and maybe just make a rough selection of a circle in the center like this with some really weird shapes. And we're going to make that like an extreme kind of bright kind of white color. And I'll get the dodge tool to do this though. So bump up that dodge tool brush, pack that in the center, let go, and then I'm going to without the selection, do it once more again through the center, and that's really going to start adding. It's also giving it that cell shaded look, but that intensity as well. So now we've got a very nice, simple kind of backdrop using just selections and things like that, using a nice twirly motion. And it's very similar to that. I kind of like the new one more because it's even more kind of cell shaded in a way and a bit cleaner as well. The next thing I'll probably do is I'll go around some of these clouds and I would start outlining them. So I might do it on a new layer and get like a sharp brush. And this is where I can start bringing in some nice heavier details. So sampling that darkest kind of color, I'll go over all of these clouds and just start, you know, outlining them, making them look a bit more presentable. There we go. So I've just cleaned up the bottom part there. So without and then with. So without and then with. So I did it down here and it's just tidying. And you could really spend a little bit more time if you wanted to clean it up even more, and it would just keep looking better and better. So keep that in mind also. Now the next thing I want to do is we've got to mix it up with colors. So I'm going to sample that pink kind of tone, and then I'll sample this kind of orange tone over here. So the two kind of different colors. Make a new layer above, and I'll set that new layer to a color mode color, and then we'll just get like maybe that same kind of brush here that's kind of sharp but also opaque, and then select some areas that I think will have more of a pinkish kind of purpley tone. So maybe up through there, swish that around. Down here, just random little sections. It doesn't really matter. And then over on this side, maybe I'll go more of that kind of orangey kind of tone through there, and bring that up and around. And then that's really just going to start giving it a more realistic look. So that'll do there. And there you go. That's it. That's probably all I would do for that. So that's really close to the original there. And the rest was literally just some extra effects, like if I drew in a bit of debris, some rocks floating around, things like that, and then you'll have that final result. So if I put Phoenix over that, there you go. It's a bit more of a showcase. I think I actually prefer the new one better. I would also probably even amp up that dodge tool behind. So really pack it in behind her, and you see that giving it an ambience. It's almost turning to a white. But the more that I push behind her there, you're going to get this nice glow. And yeah, I actually much prefer that new one now. So I'm pretty happy I did that background there. So there we go. There's a nice simple backdrop using like a swirly hurricane kind of an effect. And just quickly, I just want to say one more thing about this background. If I duplicate it and then we go up to blur, radial blur, and I'll go spin, but you got to look where the center of this cyclone is. It's up a little bit more, so I'm going to bring that guide up maybe about there, and we're just going to spin this a fair bit, and I want to show you what we're going to do with it. So spin it. There we go. So we've got a cool spin effect. Now I'll go filter gallery, and then zoom out. We've got this cutout. It's set to cutout, and I really like that. And so if I press OK on that, and it's just a simplified version of it, have a look at between the two. So you've got this simplified one and you've got the complicated one. If I get that new one and we take the opacity down and down, it's adding an extra level of detail to everything. So about 30%, maybe 40, close to 40. And I'll just show you what that's done. So if I hide it, that's what you had before. Pretty sharp and clean. That's the brush strokes I did. If I show that now, it's kind of just adding more. So it's like as if I've just gone and done twice the work and it took 3 seconds. Like it took a little bit of extra time. But now I've got like double the strokes and the detail that's going around. It's a pretty cool little technique there. And you still get that cell shaded look to those extra levels, you see? See down here especially, like you still get all of those extra details. Like through here, I had none of that before. In here, none of that, it's empty. And now I get those extra little details. I'll go through some other examples of some very simple backgrounds like this one. for Carnage. So there is a lot going on for Carnage here. This was for the high detail tutorial, so super high details. So that means I really wanted to make the background as simple as possible, because otherwise it'd just be too hard to see what's going on. So yeah, I really wanted the focus to be on all of Carnage's details. So as you can see, the background's literally just like a blue mist, or like so I'll take that away. You can have a look. So this is literally what the background is. And the way that I did it was I just had like a solid color. So maybe like that. I'll just get rid of those. And then I would just go through with maybe like, I've got this clouded brush that I used before as well. So it's here. I'll add this brush in the brush pack as well for the tutorial. So it's this one here. It's a nice clouded brush. I also have a second version of this that's pretty cool as well. But I like to use this other one here, which just works perfect. It's got this really nice misty kind of effect. So I'll add that in as well for you guys. And this is all I use for this. So I sized it up quite large, and I would just start from the center out. So I would just do it like this. Start really bright in the center and then move it out until I have this nice kind of almost layers on itself of clouds that just keep going and going. And that's kind of how I did that one. And the rest was literally just playing with the dodge tool. So if I just keep packing that in the center so it's near solid white like that, you can see it really works quite nicely. And then I get the dodge tool, size that right up, and then I'll just amp that up in the middle so it's just quite intense. And then I think on the outside, so it's really intense in the center, and then on the outside, I would probably select shadows with the burn tool, and then I'll just go around the edges and really make them quite dense and dark. And that's kind of how I did that. So there's the original that I was talking about, and that's this one. You see, I've obviously got a lot brighter with the dodge tool in the center on the way out. And the best thing I love about the dodge tool is it really starts to saturate these clouds. You see, it's getting this nice blue kind of tone. It's really playing up on that saturation, which I love. So that's another good idea. And I know I said before about realism doesn't really mesh with like this kind of style sometimes, but in this case, it's quite blurred out. It's not even like clouded. See, I would probably even blur mine. So I might even go a filter, blur, and maybe a lens blur, because I really wanted that kind of out of focus a little bit. And now it's kind of out of focus a bit, and it's not, it doesn't have that realism look. See that? See, and those details won't clash with the actual character itself. So in these kind of cases, it was good. It gives it that kind of out of focus kind of look. Okay, let's talk about this flash piece that I had. And I really want to try and tell you how you can do this zoom effect. It's a really, really cool effect. Super, like it's best when you have it super crisp and sharp. So the way I would do it nowadays is I would do it through Clip Studio Paint. And over here, if you have a look, there's the line tool, and in that, you'll see these sub-tool parts, and it's called saturated line here. And these are really, really, really cool. I love these ones. So basically, as you can see, there are 4 different versions. There's like really stretched out lines. You've got these kind of ones. So this one here is like a freehand one, which is good. So I'm literally going around the page and selecting an area that I want it to go. When I let go, it's going to do that for me. You see how beautiful that is? It's really pulling in those lines. That's actually a perfect one right there. I love how it's got thin lines, thick lines, and a bit of a balance in between. And you've got all of these settings that you can play around with, like the gaps and the brush size and the thickness. So if I try one of these other ones out, yes, this one's more of a circle one. So you pull your circle out, and this one's got really thin ones that stretch out. So you've got all these different versions of them. Let's make that a much darker kind of thing, and I'll show you exactly what it looks like. So if I make it a smaller circle, it'll stretch right into that circle, and it stops just on the edges of where that circle went. So if I make it bigger, they all just reach out to about there. And that's kind of how this works. So let's try this. Okay, I think that's that stretchy one. Let's see what it looks like if I make a weird shape. You see that? It's kind of got like full control on it. But I like the burst one the best, I think. This is probably my favorite. So I'll take the brush size down, the gap a bit longer, and then I'll play around that. So I'm just mucking around with the settings now, and you see I can really do like a burst that goes around the rim. So I like that. I can adjust the length so they stretch out even more. I can pull that size down, or a little bit more even. So if I pull it right down, let's see what happens. See, that's really stretching out. Now what if I bring that brush size up, and we'll see what happens there. So now we're getting that effect where, kind of like I had before. If I inverted that, that'd look pretty cool. But what if we made the length even longer or less? Maybe less. So we'll go like that and see how that looks. So quite like that as well. So it's actually that's like good for an explosion or something like that. So this is like the inverted kind of version of it. So yeah, you can really play around with these and get some really cool effects. And as you can see here, I've probably done what I've just done here, but I did it as white. And so it's like white, and then it's stretching out, and then I've got the colored versions pointing in. I've probably got layers and layers and layers of that stuff here. And that's why it looks so intense. But yeah, it's a really fun tool to play around with, Clip Studio Paint, and it's called the Saturated Line Tool, and you've got all these different versions. Let's talk about Storm. So this is one that I've done for work for Marvel, and I've actually got two different suits here. So you can see there's two different versions of her. And one thing I want to point out is you can obviously see she's got a white suit and a black suit version. And you can actually tell with the background, I've changed them slightly to suit the character. So with the white suit version, I actually darkened the background more to help her white suit pop. Whereas when you've got this one, I treated it like a silhouette almost. So I had to lighten up the background to make the black pop out more. It's just something to keep in mind, because if I had this white suit version and also the white background, you can see it kind of blends. It's almost like clashing with the white. So you got the white on the white, and it's just too much. See, before I like it darker a little bit better, so you can see it pop out a little bit more. Now for the background itself, so if I just hide Storm, you can actually see here I've got, there's the back glow to help Storm pop. I've actually got the rain on its own layer. So that's something that, you know, I've done for that extra effect. I actually just drew in and sketched in some like painted lines there, just sharp lines. I've also got the lightning on its own layer, so that's literally just drawn as like with the lasso tool, or I probably would have drawn it with a big pen and then I cleaned it up, so that kind of thing to get that lightning. And if you look over here, I'll show you, if I hide those effects, my lightning bolts, they're actually blue, so they're actually a light blue color, and with the effects on, I've had a white inner glow. So if we double click on the layer style, I'll show you what I've done. The inner glow is literally set to center, and it's white, set to screen. And I've just bumped up that size. So if I take that size up or down, you can see how it has effect on that lightning there. So to get that intensity, I really wanted the white to be in the center where the lightning strike would be brightest. And then as it goes out, it's got this blue edge. So that's what I did there. And I've also got an outer glow on it that's set to blue on color dodge. I love color dodge. And that's giving it that kind of power effect, or that extra energy. And for the clouds themselves, I actually kind of thought a bit of like a hurricane. I kind of had it going up in a bit of a swirl. So if you have a look, you can actually see what I've done here before is I did it with that kind of painted brush, cloudy kind of brush. But what I've done is I've also layered over a version of that has a cutout filter on it to give it this extra cell shaded almost kind of look. So it's a blend of the two, so that it's not just so super realistic. And that's how I did the Storm piece there. Nice simple background. Now I want to talk about this Wolverine one a little bit. You could kind of call this a simple background. It really is just an explosion. But yeah, it does have a bit to it. You know, it would take a little bit of time to get this going, but it does the same thing. It really simplifies the character. It's almost, if you look around Wolverine, he really just has flat colors all around him, and the details are kind of coming out the sides, so that it doesn't clash with the character too much. It really helps them pop out. So if I see this from a distance, you can still see Wolverine's pose really, really clearly. So that was the idea here. Now if I hide Wolverine, You can kind of see, I'll try and explain how I did this backdrop here. So there's a glow. I'll hide the debris. I think when I first did this, I drew in big blobs of just that yellow tone, and I just drew it in with a nice sharp solid brush. And then I think I've added on with the lasso tool just extra edges with these colors, and I've tried to make a bit of a cell shaded explosion, thinking about big bursts and bubbles or clouds that are like pushing out and like stretching out. And then it's just got obviously a lot of the dodge tool and things like that, but the final result, I just did like a layer on top that's probably 50% opacity, and just did a radial blur to get it to stretch out like a blurred effect, so it's not super clean. I wanted to have a bit of power into it. But I won't get into the explosion too much. I have gone through one of those before. If you want to check out the Elements tutorial, there's an explosion in there, and I really get into detail about how to do a good explosion. So that's pretty much the exact same thing I did right here. All right, let's talk about Xavier here. Professor X. We've got this one. This is another one from Marvel. And this background's quite simple also. And you can see that, very simple backdrop, and again, something that relates to the character. So he's in like the compound or something like that. But yeah, so I literally just wanted to, the circle is basically framing the character. It's all about the character again. And all I did was make, it's a little bit of work in this, a little bit more work. Couple of levels of shading there, and I just did some line work, and all I did was use the elliptical tool, sized it up, made a stroke. So I set it to a stroke, and then I just duplicated that and made these extra circles, a thinner circle to go there, a thicker circle to go there. And it really just added all that kind of, it was quite easy to pull together actually. And then the character does all the work for you. So yeah. Magneto here, he was very similar to the way we did Jean Grey as well. You can see the effect on the background is pretty much the same. This is quite rushed actually, this one. Now I'm looking at it, it's not as clean as I would want it to be, that background. It's a bit more blurred out. But yeah, this is very, very similar effect to that Jean Grey one. Backgrounds like this Cyclops one here, it works because it does look like there's a bit going on, a little bit of detail, but it's also quite simple. And I want to explain this one in a little bit. So I've got a bit of framing with the smoke. I didn't want the smoke to be super standout, so it's kind of faded into the back a little bit, quite subtle, but you can see that I've got that coming up. It doesn't interact with his arms. I really wanted to make sure we had that space around there, filling in the space between his legs, which is it was quite boring before, so I just had a bit of smoke in there. And then also up here, you can, have that fold behind his arm in the background and just disappear up there. The rocks are really kind of framing this in by having that arch. It's really kind of holding it all like a cup, like you're cupping your hand and it's holding the piece. I don't know. I just thought that would be a nice way to do it. And then the last thing, I'll just hide Cyclops. Yeah, in the background, you can literally see it's just some brush strokes coming down. So a light as if there's a beam of light coming down. And the reason I do that is because our eye naturally starts from the top left all the way down to the bottom right. So our eye naturally goes down in this direction. So it's really helpful and it's pleasing to the eye to have something guide you through the character, have a look around and then down towards the bottom of the piece. I've got this really simple Ghost Rider piece here that was designed. It's actually originally just a grungy sketch, but I kind of liked it and I thought it worked quite well for Ghost Rider, his character, to have that grungy feel, that I went with it and I ran with it and I turned it into a full piece. So I have this backdrop here that's also kind of grungy. I don't even know what it's supposed to be, but I added a little bit of perspective to it. And I'm kind of inspired. Let's try something like this, and I want to show you something. So with a blank kind of color in the canvas, let's have a look. Like muck around with some grunge brushes. So if we just get, say, the really grungiest brush I've got, which I tried out before, and we'll just go through and start painting in. And we'll go through and I'm just going to like paint like side by side or like across. Try and think of where the eye might run across the sky kind of thing. Maybe we'll go down here and up there, and it doesn't really matter. Just don't hold back. I'm going to really pack that in there and just see what happens. And then similar to what I did with the moon, with this same brush and that same dark tone, get it on the brush, we're going to take the opacity down to 50%. So every time I paint now, it's only going to affect it 50% of the time. And then I'm going through and I'm doing it again. And I just want to show you what we can do here. All right, so now that I've got that, it's all on one layer, by the way. I might actually get the burn tool, play around with this, and darken some edges out. So darken that edge, and then I might just highlight the center so it's not all the same tone, because the cutout filter is going to play around with color tones. So if I have a lighter tone up through here, it's going to like try and cell shade that for me. All right, so happy with that. Just got a few settings. So you can kind of see what it's done. It's cell shaded it for me. I basically want to take out as much detail as I can. So what if I, again, go over and go a blur, motion blur, and we'll go with that same direction and really kick it up a bit. Maybe that, and then do that same filter again. So cut out, press OK, and then you'll see what you get. So that was before I did that, and then after. So you can see it's kind of simplifying it even more. And I know it doesn't look that great right now, but if I duplicate this and just quickly simplify it back to normal again with a Gaussian blur, max that out so it's a single color. Maybe just play around the levels and amp that right up so we get a bit of intensity. But if I actually get this, take the opacity down, and just keep blending it with the simple background, you can see we now have a quite detailed kind of painted backdrop that's going to work quite well with any kind of piece. So let's just say that I had Carnage, my Carnage that I've got there, and I put that over the top. I think that works quite nicely. So all the rest would just be some little adjustments, maybe behind, add a bit more glow so that he's showing a bit more. It doesn't even have to be, you know, like that. I can do like that cell shaded glow. There we go, and that's quite simple. And what if I did some framing in some way? So we had like some goo maybe coming around from the outsides, and basically just make it black. Like start getting your sharp brush out and start drawing in some black strands or something like that goes across. I think that would work really well. It's a bit of an overload there, but I think that something like that would work if you don't want to have it so plain and boring. Bring in some framing around the outside. That's a pretty choppy job there, but yeah, I think something like that would work all right. Okay, so I've just done all the flat colors for my Green Goblin now. So he's ready to go. I don't think I'll have time to render and complete him, but this is all about the background. So, all right, we're going to get into it. I've just put a solid background color in there. It's like a deep kind of bluish kind of tone because I kind of want to do a night scene. I'm very inspired by this scene here from No Way Home. And if you've seen the movie, most of Goblin's scenes are outside and at night. So I think I'll make the most of like the moon. I also found this image here and someone has saturated it, put more contrast in, and that inspired me more. I was like, oh, I really like that kind of deep blue around the moon and stuff. So we're going to do something like that. And this will also be very similar to the way I did the Invincible piece that has a very simple background as well. So we're going to do some nice clouds to help frame the bottom there, and I'll do a moon up the top and just some other shapes to try and, you know, pull it all together. All right, so let's have a look. I'm starting to think I want to go without that bomb. So I don't think I really want that now. I don't know, maybe I'll move it somewhere else, whether it's, you know, down here or something like that. But I'm not quite sure exactly what I'm going to do. I might just put it somewhere else later, but I don't know where. But we'll figure that out later. So I think for now I'm going to remove that and get rid of it. I do have some smoke in the back that I put in. I actually got that from one of my other characters. But I think what we might do is I'll probably draw my own in, and maybe we'll use a bit of both. Maybe I'll use that part there and then draw the rest, because I want to be a bit more freehand with it. And I think that the smoke will help, like we can be smart about it. So I can actually have it kind of wind up and around. Maybe there's a trail. But for now, we're going to focus on this backdrop. So what I might start with is more of a mid-tone blue, maybe something like that to start with. Doesn't have to be that saturated. Maybe we'll take that down a little bit. I need to figure out where the moon's going to go first, which I think it's going to be up around the middle of him, but which I think will be obviously probably up behind him, behind his head. So here's some inspiration that I just found. I just typed in Moon Knight because he, obviously, you know, he's the most obvious character that would probably have a moon behind him. And I just wanted to see what other people have done with placement. So I like the way it's kind of just behind the head, almost just off over the shoulder. Yeah, so this is definitely going to help me. See, this one here with the clouds is kind of what we're going to be going for, something like that. So it's always good to have a bit of inspiration. Now, I've got like a nice medium blue there. And I think I'm just going to get a really soft brush in Photoshop here, like this kind of feathered soft brush right here, something like that. And I'm going to size it right up, and I'll just put a nice glow behind Goblin. That's just a good start, just to get a feel, you know, to get a feel for it. Really just start whacking it in and put a nice big glare around him so it's not just one solid color in the backdrop there. Now the next best thing we can do is definitely do the moon. So I don't know how big I want it. I'm going to start with big so that we can put some detail in it. So using the elliptical tool, and I've just drawn a big circle selection, I'm going to fill it with a near white kind of color. It was kind of originally this blue, and I pulled it up to near white, and I didn't want to go exactly white just yet. All right, so I'm going to use it probably, kind of like it there. But I think later on we're probably going to size it down. I'm not sure yet. We're going to figure that out soon. But for now, let's actually just focus on the moon right now. I'm going to actually detail this. So a cool thing that you can do, if you ever want to know how to kind of detail a moon, find a really good grunge kind of brush. Now I've got a couple here that I've used. I might, I'll put them in a brush pack for you, and I'll add it into the tutorial once I release it. But here is a really good grunge brush that I like to use, and this is really good, especially for stuff like this. You see that? I really want to put some slight details in the moon. Now what I've done here is, I should have mentioned, I've got a nice lighter kind of blue. It's almost like a teal kind of color. That's going to help with the brightness of the moon. I don't want to go with anything too deep and dark. It's just a subtle addition of a detail. Now what I'm going to do is just keep brushing around the moon really big as well. I'm just thinking about covering a lot of ground on the moon here. I'm going in a circle motion, basically trying to think of it as a planet and a sphere. Okay, and now I'll get my eraser out with the same brush, so that grunge brush with the eraser, and size that up. And now I'm going to start chipping away in certain areas as well, and I think that's going to bring out those details a bit better. Now I'm going to try something. If I get the burn tool and I'll set it to shadows, and then I'm going to size that brush up. It's always on a soft brush, and I'm going to brush around and darken some of the edges of the moon just a bit, and just see what comes of that. And then, like, as it gets to the center, I want it to be the brightest, almost super bright. So I'm going to go dodge tool now, and I'm going to set that to highlights, and then I'll just size that up from the center just a little bit so we still get some detail. There we go. And I think that's going to work pretty well. That's better. And now I'm just going to start going around again. Just want to patch up a few areas and make it like with a different kind of tone. Maybe like this kind of desaturated kind of tone just in some areas. I'm just going to make this moon look a bit more natural. All right, so now that we got that, I'm going to put a new layer above all of this. And I don't want the moon to be so perfect like this. So I'm actually going to start brushing. Actually, I'll sample that white, and I'm going to start brushing around the edge of this moon in some areas. Not all of it, just some, like this. Actually, we'll put that layer underneath the actual circle, so it's underneath everything. That way it's not going to touch this blue stuff. And then you see what I'm doing? And I'm doing this nice kind of little... It's just going to add like a little bit of roughness to the moon. I just like to add a little bit of stylization to it. I might even add like a little stream like this that just goes around it. All right, one more thing I want to do is just get that eraser, grunge eraser, and I'm going to go around the edges, and you see what I'm doing? I'm making like a white rim light around the moon using that as well. I want to make sure that blue doesn't creep right to the edge. So I'm actually going to erase it quite large, like that, I guess. Yeah. And I want to go all the way around. And I want to try one more thing on this moon. I want to put a few craters in, like just sketch it in really, really rough. And I'll actually go around some of these grungy areas and shape them with an outline and just see how that might look. All right, there we go. And all I'll do now is I'll get the dodge tool with the midtones and I'll just size that up. And I'm going to glow it from the middle so that all the outlines right in the center are really going to be quite faded out. All right, so now that I have a moon, I need to try and get the placement right. And once we have the placement, the rest will just fall into place. All right, I'm going to go with that for now. I think that's going to work. Anything smaller, I think, is a bit weird and just not powerful enough like that. Just kind of makes him look like he's got a Mysterio dome. So I think I might just leave it like that. And now I can get onto the clouds. So I think what I might do is I might actually darken this background a little more. Yeah, probably more like that. I think that's looking a bit better. And now I want to try and get some clouds in. So the best thing you can do is just get a nice big solid brush. Doesn't have to be anything special, just the typical brush that comes with Photoshop that does hard kind of edges. And we need to try and find a color for the clouds that are not too dark, probably a medium kind of tone for now. Stick to kind of a light blue. Maybe I'll sample that middle there, and as we get down like that, that'll help. And what I like to do is I like to find levels of clouds. So just start painting in and do them in like little bumps. So one bump, a couple of bumps there, and just keep adding bumps to each other until you feel like, you know, it's getting somewhere. And I might even have these kind of creeping up just a little bit like there. So just coming up the side there. And I also want to kind of have some coming up and over the top corner here. So that's going to frame that top part of this piece. And then I'm going to make a new layer underneath these clouds. And we're going to start drawing them in here over here. And it's just a little bit of a darker tone, just a little bit. And that's just going to be that next level of clouds. You're not really going to see them anyway because I'm going to have some of that smoke from the glider booming around here. But basically, over on this side, it's really hard to see, but I'm actually doing that next level behind here. So if I just lighten that up so you can see where I've painted. See that? See how I'm painting over here now as well? It's good to do two levels of clouds over each other, and they're kind of folding and going around each other, kind of like that. And now with my lasso tool, so I'm going to get the lasso tool, I'm going to literally just select edges of these clouds. It doesn't really matter where, as long as I'm following these bubble kind of shapes. So we can even go indent a little bit if you want to. So just start with the edges and we'll just select those. And one thing to keep in mind is the moon is the main light source here for the clouds. So these are the edge lights. So I want to make sure that all the light is aiming up towards any of these edges that I'm selecting are coming from the moon. So this is definitely an above selection, not the side as much. All right, so now that I've got that, I've got that selection on this light blue cloud here. If I just press Control J, that'll duplicate off that. So you can see I've got just that selection now in a solid color. Leave it where it was. So then I will go Control L, get my levels up, and let's just bring those levels up a little higher like that, just a bit. Now leave it there, just doesn't matter. We're just going to do a little bit of lightness. And you can see that's just added that next level of kind of rendering to those clouds. I'm going to do the exact same to the other clouds now. So there's something I want to try out because I feel like it's just too clean, that background, too clean. So I really want to try something. This back color here, this backdrop, what if I make a new layer above that? We'll get the grungiest brush I know, which is probably this one here. And I'll just select maybe the darker shade and we'll go over the top really large. And I'll just want to start doing some random kind of grunge effects over it. Now don't worry, it's not going to stay like this forever. I'll show you what I'm going to do with it. And then I'll go over it again with the opacity taken down. So I can just get another level of grunginess in there. And now what I'm going to do is just muck around with this thing here. So if I merge it with that flat color, we'll actually duplicate them first and then merge. So I've got that on its own flat layer now. Because now I can play around with the filter gallery. And this will sometimes come up with some really cool, just a next level kind of way of cell shading. So now I have this weird kind of blob thing here. So if I blend that, take the opacity down of that, you know, you get another kind of cell shaded level that's got some cool edges to it. But I don't really like that, it's too obvious. So I'm going to try another one. You know, what if I had something like this? So that's just using the filter cutout. And now, what if I go around using this, just tidying up using that same color around the moon, just so we can see what kind of an effect we'll get. Because it's all about escaping realism. I'm trying to have a style. I don't want any kind of realism, you know. Here's an example. I just found this on the internet, right? So if I just left it like this and I just copied an image maybe off the internet and placed it here, I just don't like, the styles don't match. You've got realistic, like this realistic moon and clouds, and then you've got the goblin, who's a totally different style. So I'd rather match. So we've got a lot of work to do here, don't worry, but mine's way too light now. I'm looking at it. But now that I've got that style behind of that grunge, I'm going to fade it back. So it was never going to stay that strong kind of color, but I'm fading that down to probably 30%. So if you look at the original that was real plain and boring before, and now I've added that, you can kind of see some levels of that grungy kind of effect for the sky. So that's just an added level that I really think helps a lot. All right, so now that I've got that sky done, I'm going to play around with the levels on it. So levels, and then pull that up and really get some density in there. So what I'll do is I'll actually leave that there like that, press OK, get my burn tool, and it's assigned to shadows. So it only darkens shadows and not like highlights. And then I'm going around the edges. So really bringing in that darkness down the bottom there, where the moon, you know, we want to make sure the lightest part is up near the moon there. And now what I want to do is the same kind of thing with these clouds here. So I'm going to start darkening that bottom layer. So I'm going to start darkening that kind of solid layer underneath. These highlights on top stay, and I'm just darkening the underneath part of the clouds, but only the edge, so that the lighter part is towards the moon. I'm also taking the saturation down on them. I think it's just too much. In the same with the top bit. So with the top bit, which is this highlight part here, we're going to use the dodge tool and try and light up some parts now, but only like really hug that outer edge. So really hug that outer edge there. We're probably going to actually blend. So I'm going to put a mask on there now, a layer mask on this edge, the same one, and I'm going to fade off some parts so they blend a little bit more. That way we just get a bit of a softer look to those clouds. They're a little too harsh on those edges. So on any edge that's before, I'm going to fade it back a little bit. And on these outer ones, I'm leaving them. I want to leave them so they're nice and solid and crisp, because they're going to be like the moonlight hitting them. See, on this back bit, I've just faded back these behind clouds as well, so that we can really get that depth between them now. All right, another thing I want to do is just kind of, I might add a little bit more detail to these clouds. So, so using a nice soft brush here, I'll add that in the brush sets as well. This one like tapers out, but it also fades. The lighter I press, it's a bit opaque. So what I'm doing is I just sampled like this color here, and I'm going to start brushing over again, and just with this, and I'm going to go over certain areas to just, I really want to add like another level of highlight to this. So if I can even go on the outside a little bit as well, just to give it a little bit more of a fadey kind of look, like a floaty look. You see that? See how I'm kind of going on the outside of those, just offsetting it a little bit. And I think that's going to make it look a little bit more cloudy in a way. So it's not like a super crisp kind of edge, but it still does look cell shaded. And I think that's a good way of doing clouds. And now that I've got that, I can actually finally muck around with some some levels and tones of those clouds. I feel like they're too bright still, so I'm getting the mid-tones and I'm just going through these clouds now, and I'm really just dimming some of them down around the edges. Okay, now we need to try and make the character pop. So making a new layer above all of the background, I'm going to get a soft brush. So I'm going to go layer mode, screen, and then I'll get a nice bright blue, maybe like that really icy kind of blue there, and fade behind Goblin here. So I might even make it a more of a dense or yeah, like a deeper blue, and then we'll see what happens behind Goblin here. So yeah, so try and fade behind him as if the moon is lighting his pose up. So I really want Goblin to kind of have a nice big faded glow behind him. I want his pose to kind of stand out from a distance. So that's the goal here. And I can really, if I want to, really amp that up behind if I feel like I need to. So zoom out. I always zoom out a fair bit, and then Control Z to see what I think is better and what is too much. I'm actually happy to go pretty intense with it because I want that pose to stand out. I want to try one last thing with this background. So I'm talking about this backdrop here. I still feel like it's too plain. So what I'm going to do is let's get like a brush, like a cloud brush. So this is like a realistic cloud brush. If I just sample maybe a lighter color, and we'll start doing this kind of an effect around Goblin here and up in the back here. You see that? So I kind of like that. And what we'll do with that now that I've got that in, just a little bit more clouded kind of effects there, is like I said before, I don't want to have a realistic kind of look, clouded look in here. So what I'll do with that, now that I've got that, by the way, I did duplicate that layer and make it on a new one, so it didn't affect my old one. So there's my old one. This is the new one I just painted over. So the brush, this clouded brush, has to be painted onto a flat background for this to work. So that flat solid color of the sky I was talking about, that's what I painted on. I'm going to go filter and filter gallery, and then we'll just see what it looks like with a cutout or poster edges. That's yeah, there we go. That's a bit better. So I've set poster edges. You can change the posterization. So I actually like that level there. That's good. So press OK. Now I know what you're thinking. That doesn't look that great, especially those areas up and around here. But I think that kind of helps a lot. So what I'm going to do with that is put a layer mask on it, and I want to bring some of my old background back in that's more plain, and just to remove some of these outer edges that are a bit too, I don't know, I just feel like they're a bit too much. So I'm going to fade some of that away, but I want to keep some of these cool cloud effects as well. And what I'll also do is just take the opacity overall down to about 60%, I reckon. So that way at least I've got a little bit of detail through here now in the background. You see these kind of details up through the back, and that's a nice simple way of doing it. So if you just want to remove that realistic clouded effect, put a filter on it, whether it's poster edges or cut out, and play around with those kind of things, and then just fade it back a little bit if you want to. I think we should also add a few stars in, but faint ones, because it's like very cloudy. I'm in Clip Studio right now, but if I go press B, there we go. There's a thing here called Droplet, or there's also Spray. I might try Droplet. I'm going to sample that kind of light blue color in there, and I'm just going to size that right up. And you see what happens now that I'm spreading it out. We can get some stars in there. So I'm just going to put a few up here. I might even take the particle size up. And I like Droplet because it has big particles and it's also got small particles, just like stars. So you want to have like big ones and small ones. I want to see what 20 would look like, because I want it to be kind of obvious. And now we've got the stars in. They're nice and subtle in the back now. Just something extra for the sky. And now I want to try and muck around with this smoke, and I'm just going to just blot it in. I might actually use a solid brush, and we'll just throw it in. Again, same as I did with the clouds. I'm just going to try and find a nice place for the smoke to belong. So I want it to kind of get smaller and smaller in the back as it goes, and kind of like that. And then eventually just fade out, have it kind of go in front of the moon, I guess. And now I'm just tidying up these blobs so they look a little bit more attractive. And now that I've got that laid out, I can just outline it, similar to what I've done here. There we go, now we've got a bit of a comic look to it, and I'm just going to start rendering around it now. But there we go, that's about Goblin done. So he's about ready now. So here's that background by itself, so you can see what we went through. You can see that same kind of technique I used with that Invincible piece, and the idea of just framing the overall piece, and you can really just see where a character might slot in there right away. And that's the whole idea of this, to really just showcase your character. So just super quickly, I want to show you a technique for creating a moon, but a really quick way of doing it. So using that grunge brush again, if you went around and you just grunged in a bunch of effects around, and then I'll sample that white and we'll do the same thing and bring back some of the white. So just going around, basically just trying to get like a really nice kind of rough looking texture around the whole thing. And then I'll fade that back to about 50% on our brush, and it's using this blue, and I'll go around again in just some areas. You can see that's what that's doing already, is creating kind of a 3D effect around some parts of it. Make sure our brush is at 100%, and I want to bring in that kind of glowy edge as well. Okay, so now that I've got that, now that's looking pretty cool already. So what we can do is go filter gallery. This is what I love to do. And I just go up and I select cutout. That's the filter cutout. Now this is a really good way of trying to, get a cool looking moon. Play around with the levels and see what looks good. And there you go, like that's it. And then just get your dodge tool, set to highlights, and glow the middle of this to bring it all back. Maybe set some midtones as well, so it's like brightening it right up even more. And then back to highlights, go around that rim. And there you go, that was quick, that was super quick. And now you've got a nice looking moon. Using this dodge tool is also saturating these edges, so it's like giving a nice icy blue. And there you go. That's a cool way and a quick way of doing a moon that looks detailed and it's stylized. It's not super realistic looking, and it's just got these nice jagged kind of grungy kind of effects around, and it looks like texture on a moon. So yeah, I actually kind of prefer that, I think, than our original moon. I mean, the original one's okay, but I kind of like the more stylized look even more. So yeah, just an idea. I just thought I'd share that. Here's also another variation of that using that same technique. You can see how stylized that is. I just like how one side has like a little bit of that all around it. But yeah, but I hope that helps. We're going to mix it up. And one more that I want to talk about is doing these kind of video effect lines in the background for your character, like different kind of styles, I really like that kind of effect. Now, I don't feel like even though this is quite recent, this picture that I did of Scarlet Witch, I don't feel like I really pulled that off too well, that backdrop there. So I'm going to try a new one. I'll just fill that in with a pink, and we'll just get like a strong kind of red tone. And I want to show you this brush that I found recently. I wish I found this when I was doing that Scarlet Witch piece. But I have this video, this like awesome line effect here. The brush automatically goes diagonal like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start drawing it diagonally. I have to kind of think like that. And I'm drawing in some kind of random shapes and lines. And they taper. I want them to taper out as they get further out to the side and thicker in the middle in some areas. There we go. It's quite simple. I actually did two versions. I'm not very happy with the first one, but I will keep them both. And then basically I need to flip it so it's horizontal. So it's like this. I'll size that up. It's going to look pretty dodgy and pixelated, but we'll get there. Size it right up. There we go. And it is pixelated a little bit, but we can easily fix that. So basically what I'll do to fix that is I'm basically just going to go filter blur and motion blur and make sure it's set to 0. So it's perfectly flat. And yeah, that's just going to stretch it out. That's going to blur out those edges, and I'm looking at them and making sure that they're blurred out nicely. Press OK. And I just realized I kind of want this to be inverted the other way around. So I'm going to make the background that color, and I'm going to lighten these radio effects. So there you go. That's kind of how I would do that effect now. I'm going to blur the top one as well, so blur them out. And if you want to make them absolutely perfect, if I want to make them absolutely perfect and not feathered like this, I would have to actually merge it all together with that pink background and then go filter and cut out, I guess. So we'll do a cutout effect on it. And if you have a look, that cutout effect will make it cell shaded pretty much. And then you see that, and now that's actually sharpened that. And then I can also, if I wanted to, go sharpen unsharp mask to really crisp it up a bit. So now that's super sharp now. But yeah, I just wanted to explain how you can kind of get that radio wave effect using that brush. And I think that's a handy little tip. You could really go a long way using this kind of thing. And I think that would have really benefited me back when I first did this. But yeah, you can see a lot of these sections that have been selected and then shifted. You've got to outshift some areas left and right. Another cool little effect I want to show you while we're on it. And it's like this radio effect, is duplicate, like this is all flattened by the way, this is the final piece, duplicate it, double click on the second layer version. If you untick the green and the blue and keep red on these channels, just keep the red, press OK, and then slightly shift it. So I'm just nudging it a little bit to the right. You're going to get that 3D effect. So that's also a good way to add to this radio wave effect. So before it was that, and now it's that. You see that 3D effect. So that's a really cool technique, and what it does is it makes it look like you got 3D glasses on. That's something else that I would like to do, you know, that would have been nice to add to this piece as well, to really make it look like, yeah, that kind of effect on it would have really worked well for this. It's a good effect to add to some pieces as well, to almost make them feel more alive sometimes. It's really subtle, but it makes them really pop out and make them feel more energetic or alive or something like that. Yeah, it's a good little tip there. Alright everyone, I think that's about it. I hope that I've covered enough for you with simple backgrounds. So we kind of did the swirly effect, went around that, kind of redid that Jean Grey one. Nice simple ones like this Carnage one here, just by playing around with some brushes and filters as well in Photoshop, so that can sometimes lead to like a really nice detailed background, but also simple at the same time. Then we did more like a kind of a complex one with Green Goblin here, with the moon and all that. And I've gone through all the other ones. I think we may have gone through enough, I think. So I'm hoping that I've covered enough. Let me know in the comments if there's something that you would like to know, because we can always do a part 2. And I can do a whole different range of simple backgrounds as well. So yeah. Alright, well, that's it for this tutorial. I hope that helps. I hope that you picked up a few new tricks or something like that, whether it comes to Photoshop filters. I'll also attach that brush pack for you in the tutorial, so hopefully that'll help as well. But yeah, I think that's about it. Alright everyone, thank you so much for your support and everything. It's been great. I appreciate you all. And yeah, alright, keep drawing. Get back into it. I'll talk to you all later. Bye.